please. Okay, chapter 8, Fast Food Nation, page 169 in my book. Also entitled, The Most Dangerous Job. You might think it's a NASCAR driver, but not according to Eric Schlosser. Talks about chainmail. You need to know what chainmail is. I think I put that on the test. Basically, they have to wear like 8 pounds of steel to protect themselves from cuts. Okay, if you are working on the line at a slaughterhouse, you might accidentally cut yourself or the guy or the gal next to you. He takes a slaughterhouse tour and sees all this. And most of the workers, about half of them women, are young and Latino. That's a stereotype. And if you watch the movie, which is a fictionalized depiction of the themes of the book, you see that a lot of them experience the hardships of working on the line and then trying to suck up to the boss. Page 171, he talks about how they are, quote-unquote, humanely killed, right? First, there's the sticker, okay? Bless you. Bless the sticker. They have the unfortunate job of slitting the neck of the steer, about one steer every 10 seconds, and trying to sever its carotid artery as quickly and as smoothly as possible. Bless you. Let's go forward to 172. He talks about, can you please stop talking? Thank you. Kids these days, right? Am I right? Yeah. 172, he says, the path has hairpin turns that prevent the cattle from seeing what's in store and keep them relaxed. So they're like meandering into, like, you know, it's like us, when the bell rings, we just like, oh, go to the next class. You know, the cattle are just like, oh, I'm just going to go into this building and follow my friends. Little do they know that it's their last trip. And through the light, or through the little window, this is on 172, uses this image. Through the little window, you can see bright red carcasses on hooks going round and round. Meat packing is now the most dangerous job in the United States. Apparently it's not NASCAR racing or being a quarterback in the NFL. And he talks about the lacerations. Okay, lacerations are a big problem. It gets to the point where they really want sharp knives, to the point where they're going to go home at night, take their knives with them, and while they're watching TV or doing whatever, sharpen their knives so the next day it makes their job easier. The IBP revolution is an important element in this chapter. On 173 at the bottom, he talks about that. The old meat packing plants in Chicago slaughtered about 50 cattle an hour. 20 years ago, new plants in the High Plains slaughtered about 175 cattle an hour. Today, some plants slaughter up to 400 cattle an hour. About half a dozen animals every minute. Crazy. But, you know, we do need our steakhouses and Korean barbecue. 174, they talk about ConAgra, IBP, and Excel, and once a slaughterhouse is up and running, fully staffed, the profits it will earn are directly related to the speed of the line, right? It's like when you go to Del Taco, which I do quite often, as I mentioned, you know, they want you in and out of there as quickly as possible, okay? The faster the drive-through goes, the more money they make. The faster the line at the slaughterhouse. Talks about the how they don't want to report injuries, and they don't want them to take sick back to report injuries and call in sick, because they'll be replaced. Or they'll be given a job that's less desirable. The supervisor is, in effect, a sort of mini dictator, he talks about on 176 at the top. But the worst job at the slaughterhouse is what? Does anyone remember? Cleaning crew. That's right. The men, this is top of 177. The men and women who now clean the nation's slaughterhouses may arguably have the worst job in the United States. Felt bad for this one guy, Jesus, on the bottom of 177. One night while Jesus was cleaning, a coworker forgot to turn off the machine. He lost 2 fingers and went into shock. An ambulance came to take him away. He was back at work the following week. His supervisor said, "If one hand is no good, use the other." Harsh. And to think I took a week off for my titanium hip. What a slacker. 178. If you recall reading the death rate among slaughterhouse sanitation crews being extraordinarily high, and he talks about this phrase, disposable worker. This ties into the Devil's Highway, which we read earlier this year. These workers are illegal, so they're not going to complain or report things. They're impoverished and untrained. And then at the end of that section, he talks about how a guy got beheaded. A typical American employer could expect an OSHA inspection about once every 80 years. So these places are not being inspected. Okay? Here at Tesoro, we get a WASC visit every 6 years if we're a good school. They are rewarded for covering up and disclosing no injuries or the minimal amounts of injuries. There was one congressman on 180 who called IBP one of the most irresponsible and reckless corporations in America. So again, you can tie this into any prompt from AP that ties to corporations or corporate greed. 181, I wrote wow in my margin. Some workers were compelled to show up for work on the same day as a surgery or the day after an amputation. So they lose a finger and they have to come in the next day. If not, they're afraid their job will be taken. They have a safety award system, which is ironic because it actually promotes unsafe conditions. So be aware of that. And he uses the Palestine plant as an archetype on 182. He says this Palestine plant in Texas found a number of serious violations, imposed a fine of $35,125. So they get a slap on the wrist. And less than a week after this fine, a worker named Clarence Dupree lost an arm in a bone-crushing machine. Again, the most dangerous job in America. Let's fast forward again. I know you all read this. Do you remember the price of an arm? Anybody? The price of an arm? $36,000. Good job. That's important. Make sure you know that for the test. And he talks about Kenny on 186. Poor Kenny. Kenny is used as an illustration of the evils of the meatpacking industry. He worked there as a Montford employee for 16 years. Broke his leg. He was overexposed to chlorine. He had to have a stent. In the end, while he's recuperating, he's fired. Kenny, sadly, is a disposable worker.